Hey there, friends. It's Melanie Grace. I am back with my podcast after a couple weeks, and I want to welcome you back to the Quilting with Rulers podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Grace, and today's episode is all about something that sneaks up on every beginner, even intermediate quilters, and even myself. How the heck do you hold a quilt when you're quilting? You've got the ruler, you've got a ruler foot on, and then your quilt starts wiggling like a toddler on a sugar high. Sound familiar? Yeah, same. Well, so in this episode, I want to just dive into how to control the bulk, what tools can actually help us, and how to get your stitches smooth as glide thread. Let's go. I don't know why my phone is beeping. It's bugging me. So why holding the quilt is half the battle? So here's the thing, ruler quilting or quilting with rulers isn't just about tracing those pretty lines. It's going to be about control. And the good control starts with how you position. Oh my God. Stop beeping. I'm going to have to edit all this out. Stop. Okay. If your fabric has ever felt like it has a mind of its own, bunching, shifting, dragging under the needle, you're not alone. I'm going to have to restart this whole thing. I don't even do that. Just no sound. Okay. Restarting at 2:35. Hey there, quilting friends. I am back after a couple weeks, and I am back with a Quilting with Rulers podcast. I am your host, Melanie Grace, and today's episode is all about something that sneaks up on every beginner quilter, intermediate quilter, and sometimes even the advanced quilters. And it's how the heck do you hold your quilt and handle the bulk on when you're quilting on your domestic sewing machine? You've got your ruler, you've got your ruler foot, and then once you get that quilt under, you may notice that it starts to wiggle like a toddler on a sugar high, or just it gets heavy and gravity is just pulling. Well, it happens to me too. And in this episode, I'm going to dive into how we can control the bulk, some tools that can help, and I really want to get it so that our stitches are smooth like glide thread. So let's go. So here's the thing, ruler quilting isn't just about the pretty lines or getting straight lines or perfect stitches, but it's going to be about control. And the control is going to start with how you position and handle your quilt. If your fabric has ever felt like it has a mind of its own, if it's bunching or shifting, dragging under the needle, just know that you are not alone. It happens to be one of the most common challenges when quilters face when transitioning to any type of quilting on a domestic machine. Some things that you can look at is your basting. I find that when I am basting with pins, it's a lot harder for me to move around. I much prefer like a spray based or even a powder adhesive based or pre-fused batting is always a great option for basting. But the truth is quilts are heavy. They create drag and they shift with gravity. And without the right setup, that weight can make your quilting experience a little frustrating. And I experienced this past weekend when I was quilting. And even with the best rulers and a good ruler foot, your results can suffer if you're not supporting the quilt properly. Let's walk through some of those techniques that can make a big difference. First thing is your hand placement matters. You want to lay your hands flat on the quilt with your palms down. Fingers can be relaxed and open. Spread them out as much as you can. You want your hands to be close to the needle, but not so much that the needle bar will actually hit your hands. You're going to be able to guide your quilt under that needle. So you're going to want to apply gentle and even pressure, enough control so that the movement can move without straining your hands. Also make sure that you are sitting up straight. Make sure that your sewing machine is at a reasonable level. You can also look up ergonomics for your chair. You don't want to get wrist issues or back issues when you're quilting. You basically want your sewing machine to be, so if I'm sitting in a chair and I have my arms down and I bring my elbows up to, my hands up to a 90-degree angle at my elbow, that is where it should be. I shouldn't have my hands up towards my shoulder quilting around or lower. You basically want to have it nice and smooth around a comfortable area for your shoulders. When using a ruler, you want to maintain contact with that ruler, the quilt, and your hands. So you have either the ruler on your right side or your left side. Your right hand or your left hand is going to be holding that ruler, and you're going to be pushing the quilt with the ruler underneath the needle. This is also one big reason why I recommend using grippy spray on the back of your rulers, because that will prevent the ruler from slipping around the top of your quilt while your quilt is slipping around the machine. It definitely helps you maintain precision without feeling like you need to press super hard. Then we want to work on the support the weight of the quilt. So you can use your sewing table, a slide-on extension table, or even your lap to keep the quilt level. You can also put your sewing machine on, say, the dining table after it's all clear, so it's tough to move. If you have a kitchen island, this is a great opportunity for you to use that island for your quilting pleasures. I also would say I like to roll the sides inward. So as I'm working a big quilt, I'm going to be rolling in the right side toward the neck of the machine and the left side towards the other end. And this can also help manage that bulk, but it also help give you some better control over your movement, kind of like soft handles to guide your fabric. If possible, I would say place a table behind your machine. This is going to catch the quilt behind you as you move through, and it prevents the needle from pulling forward and backward due to gravity. It may seem like a very small change or a bulky change, but it can have huge impact, because as you're pushing the quilt through, it's not bunching up in the back, and it's just spreading out flat behind the quilt. It does help with the quality of stitch and the ease of your movement. Then I want to say, consider your thermostat and consider your comfort. So when it's warm, turn on a fan, adjust the thermostat, get that AC pumping. Quilting with a heavy quilt project on your lap can get uncomfortable really quickly. So keep yourself cool and relaxed. And this will help maintain that steady hand control. It reduces tension in your shoulders and neck. Turn on your ceiling fan, just keep yourself cool. The way you handle your quilt and how it's positioned, supported, and moved will directly affect your success when you're quilting, and especially when quilting with rulers. Take the time to set up your space well, practice good posture, and listen to your body as you quilt. If you start experiencing pain in your neck or your wrist or your elbow or your shoulders or your back, let's adjust how you're quilting so that way you don't get in pain. And also then, I want to say, your tools do matter. How you use them matters even more. Some of the gear that you can actually get that will help you quilt. Quilting gloves. They're like grip enhancing magic. They help you move your quilt without slipping. So when your hands are flat and you're pushing on that quilt, they don't get tired from white knuckling your fabric. Your hands kind of like grip onto the quilt while your ruler grips on the quilt, and it's going to help you move around so much. And in my podcast notes, I will have a link for you to buy that if you want. I have 2 great pairs that I've actually used. Another thing you can use are slip mats or the Supreme Slider. This is an amazing tool you put basically under your needle plate, not under your needle plate, under your needle and on top of your needle plate. It's a slippery mat that goes under the quilt and reduces drag. And I like to say, think of it as a quilting version of a slip and slide without the water. I also have a link for that in the show notes. Some other things that I even mentioned before: extension tables, drop-in tables, your dining room table, your kitchen island. Let's get that quilt up and supported so that it doesn't have drag and that the stitches look nice and even. The last thing is that grippy spray. Get that grippy spray. If anything else, get the grippy spray, prep your rulers, and you're going to notice a world of difference. The last thing I want to touch back is back on the technique. So again, when you're sitting at your machine, you have all your tools out, your quilt is under the needle. Relax your shoulders. Seriously, you're quilting, not lifting weights. We want to get that ergonomic 90-degree on your shoulders. Then I want to talk about quilting yoga. I learned this from Renee Merrill. She wrote a book called Free Motion Mastery in a Month. I actually took a class from her in 2024 at the Road to California Quilt Show, and I learned about quilting yoga. And it basically she talked about the motions that we do as quilters and how we need to prep our bodies for this. You really want to make sure that your body is in a comfortable position so that you don't get injured, you don't hurt yourself. I highly recommend checking out her book. She's got some great visuals on exactly how to place your body ergonomically while you're quilting. Flat hands, light pressure, get those quilting gloves on, put your hands on your quilt and move that quilt around depending on where your sewing machine is. If your sewing machine is on top of a table, if you have one of those extension tables that you place onto your machine, that's going to help you. If you, my machine isn't like on a sunken in table, so I have an acrylic thing that goes on top of it, so it sits lower, and that way it is a perfect 90 degree for me. You want to make sure that your quilt is flat. You don't want any bumps, any curves. You want to make sure that as you are pushing this quilt through, pushing your quilt through, you are placing out the fabric under the needle and kind of pushing it so that is perfectly flat. It can be curled and bunching on the sides, but where you're quilting, that needs to be flat. Next, we're going to move the quilt and the ruler together. You're going to keep one hand on the ruler and half on the fabric and one hand on the fabric. And remember, they're dance partners, they're not rivals. You're going to be moving the fabric and the ruler around that needle and around that ruler. You might have to go forward and back, side to side, but you're not moving just the quilt, you're not moving just the ruler. You're moving them together. And remember to stitch slowly. It's not a race. You are not a NASCAR driver. Quilting is about precision, not speed. So if you have a setting with like a turtle and a hare, make sure it's as close to that turtle as you are comfortable. You don't want to be snail pace slow. We want to be turtle slow. The last thing is reposition often. So you will notice that as you're quilting, you need to move that quilt so that you can quilt the next portion of it. You want to lift your quilt every few inches. You want to be able to shift it, move it, kind of make sure it's on your lap. Make sure that it's not bunching in any area. To this point, make sure your needle is in the needle down position. So that way, when you are moving it, so you have to lift the foot or something, you're not gonna, have a stitch that's 3 inches because you move the quilt too much. The last thing I want to bring up is pro tips and troubleshooting. So one of the problems we'll hear is my quilt keeps bunching. So what you want to do is start your quilting in the center of your quilt and work your way out. This is going to help spread the bulk evenly and will prevent drag buildup on the sides. If you started on the side and worked all the way to the other side, you will notice a disparity and kind of a missizing. And then when you square up your quilt, it's going to look all wonky. So start in the middle. Then you can quilt to the right, flip it around, quilt to the right, flip to the left, whatever you do. But just make sure that you start in the center. Then I hear my ruler keeps sliding. Again, I say grippy spray or adhesive grip straps that you put onto the back. It will be a total game changer. If you've ever cut fabric with, say, Creative Grids and their grippy technology, it's that. You put it on, you put that ruler on your quilt and it will not move. It will not slide over the quilt. The other problem, my stitches are wonky or uneven. So what I want to say to that is, remember, you are in free motion mode. The stitch length is going to depend on, number one, your movement, the speed that you've selected, and it's not your machine. One other thing that you could do is add on a stitch regulator. I have a stitch regulator as an attachment that I can put on my domestic machine. That might be something to consider. So that way you just set your machine to whatever speed. Then, actually, no, it doesn't do the speed. You basically have a separate foot, you press on the foot full, and whatever you have your stitch regulation speed set to, then it always is going to do that size stitch, but it only stitches when you move your quilt, and that is how it regulates those stitches. They're really cool. I'll actually put a link to the stitch regulator that I have. It is really, really something. All right, that is the end. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. We did cover a lot. I'm going to try to put together a free beginner ruler quilting setup checklist. It will be packed with those affiliate links, so at least that way you can get the products that I've recommended. And if you're ready to even take your quilting further, I teach everything from setup to designs to techniques, ruler movement, and all that beyond in my full online course, the Quilting with Rulers Academy. Enroll today. I am running a 75% off special for the month of June. I'd really want you to get on. You can get on that course for just $75 today. And I really hope you do, because I'd love to meet you and I'd love to see your progress. Thanks for hanging out. Thank you for hanging out with me today. If this episode helped, share it with your quilty bestie. Tag me on Instagram @TheMelanieGrace so I can cheer you on. Until next time, keep quilting like the rock star you are.